If you only did one thing to a cool season yard, what would it be? What is the most important? What makes the most difference? What's going to set you apart from the neighbor? That is a fall nitrogen application. We're going to go over exactly what that does to the turf, how critical this is. Your spring green up, make it 2 to 6 weeks, a month and a half earlier if you do this. I'm going to go over exactly what you're doing to your yard. We're also going to touch a little bit on snow mold and weed control as well in this video. So what's going on? What makes this so unique? What makes fall so unique? We got to look at temperature and what it does to turf. Shoot development. I'm talking about everything from the ground up, leaves, stems, what have you, starts to decline once when air temperatures get to 60 degrees and basically stops when it gets to 40 degrees. Rooting will continue to develop so long as the ground is not frozen. So, what happens any other time of the year, whenever you do a nitrogen application, obviously you get the green up, but the turf will put all of those resources, pretty much all of them, into the shoot development, everything on the top. But what happens in the fall that is so unique is those carbohydrates. That's what you get all the growth out of that plant. The carbohydrates, that energy you're putting in the plant with that nitrogen application elevates. Carbohydrates elevate. And now what happens, since your shoot development is slowing due to air temperature, it has all this energy, going to use it. This is the only time of year that a nitrogen application will actually lead to root development. So what happens is these carbohydrates are up in the plant, and now instead of putting it in the shoots because it's too doggone cold, or it's cold enough, start putting it in the roots and you actually get better rooting. That is the only time of year that this will occur. So if you don't bring those carbohydrate reserves up in the plant, you're not going to get this additional root growth. So long as the soil is not frozen, you will get additional root growth out of this application in the fall. Not to mention anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, a month and a half sooner than everybody else in your neighborhood, spring green up. That is a monstrous amount of time. That's why it's so critical to make this application in the fall. So how much nitrogen to apply? The Ohio State publication down below cites that you want to put it anywhere from about 3/4 to 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet on your yard during this time of year. Can you put too much? This is one of the reasons why I don't like the well, one of many reasons I don't like the nitrogen blitz. There's actually a study that was found that's cited in the Ohio State publication that once when you exceeded 2 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet during that time frame, it actually reduces the hardness of the plant and makes it less cold tolerant, and it also leads to other problems as well. Not much less mowing, because I've seen actually some guys who are using a nitrogen blitz mowing as much as 3 times a week. I do not have that much time on my hands, nor do I want to spend that much time mowing. But this is why I like this slow feed during the year. You can achieve just as much color, just as much coverage as you can with this slow feed nitrogen through the year. And you don't have to do all this craziness. Plus, when you're putting out liquid fertilizer, I'm not big on liquid fertilizers either. Though they're a tool in the box, but the one thing about liquid nitrogen applications is it's very difficult to get on in a uniform way. And what happens is, and some of these guys have actually said to their credit, they miss a spot or didn't get coverage very well. Now they got a yellow streak down the middle of their yard. Granular nitrogen applications, in my opinion, go out much more evenly, give you an even feed, give you more options. Will they maybe save you some money? Yep, they sure will. I'll admit it, but my time is money. In addition, if you really want a high quality yard and you want to take a little bit of the margin of error out of it, how much is it going to be? How much are you saving to potentially have a streak right down the middle of your yard that's probably going to be there anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on how much nitrogen you apply. So I'm just giving you a heads up on that. Do what you want to. I'll bring, as I say, I'll bring the beer and help you do it. But this is why I'm not too crazy about the nitrogen blitz, and that's why I'm going to advocate some of these fertilizers to you that are these polymer coated products. And they also, in the publication down below, are also recommending sulfur coating products to apply this time of year. So let's talk about those. Does the nitrogen source matter? Yes, it does. This is why I really stress you guys to watch the videos where I go over these different nitrogen sources so you guys can actually read the tag. We'll go over different fertilizers here in a minute. I'll show you the two tags of the two fertilizers I'm recommending for this video. You don't want to use a nitrogen source that needs microbial activity to break it down in your fall application. Reason being is one, Biological activity doubles for every increase of 10 degrees. Therefore, it decreases. It cuts in half for every 10 degrees it gets colder. So what happens is if you have a fertilizer out there that needs microbial activity to break down now becoming available to the plant, at 70, it's at a certain level. At 60, it's half that. At 50, it's half that again. At 40, it's half that again. That's why they're not recommending having a fertilizer like organics. In order for organic material to break down, you do need microbial activity in addition for stabilize urea. Some of you guys may be using maybe you guys use some of these foliar fertilizers that is not a melting down urea or ammonium sulfate, but some of these stabilized urea, these foliar fertilizers, that's what they are. Really, what you need to be using is a slow release fertilizer that is a water dependent release. So that leaves us with polymer coating or polymer sulfur coated urea. Now, I said that very carefully. Thing is, whenever you see a fertilizer bag, you'll see the back of it. It'll say polymer sulfur coated urea. Almost all sulfur coated ureas have a polymer coating on it. It has nothing to do with the release of it. That is just a very, very thin coating they put on that sulfur coating. So during the manufacture, distribution, bagging, and ultimately by the time it gets in your spreader and gets put out, that sulfur coat is protected so it doesn't crack and the integrity of that is still together, so to speak. Generally feed anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. They are a water-based release, meaning the water eventually works its way in through that sulfur coating. The sulfur coat, it's into that urea. The moment the water hits urea, it pops, expands, cracks that sulfur coating. And the sulfur coating will vary depending on the size of that urea particle that actually, by design, if you will, they'll actually put different coating or different sizes of urea in that in when they're manufacturing sulfur-coated urea, so you get different thicknesses, so it does release over that time frame. If they were all exactly the same size, they were released basically within a few days of one another. I do want you to understand these things so you know what you're getting. Ohio State does recommend those. They actually did not recommend polymer-coated urea. Now, Ohio State put in there not to use polymer-coated urea. The concern is that polymer-coated urea, because they're a temperature-dependent release, at these colder temperatures will not release enough nitrogen for the turf to take it up. I have seen in winter applications of polymer coated urea that can happen, particularly for you guys. We're talking Ohio State talking about this, probably in areas 4 north. I'm talking zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, where it stays pretty cold all year. Those in a transition zone, there's some advantages using polymer coated urea, and it's one reason why I like it. This is also the reason why you'll have fertilizers. One I do recommend, both has sulfur coated and polymer coated in them. You have these fertilizers, they blend them. The other fertilizer I'll recommend, tell you more about here in a second, actually has urea in it. It's a quick release and it's actually a decent amount of it. So you're getting kind of the both worlds. And that's why I really, if you guys, and I keep on referring to this, my fertilizer, how to read a fertilizer tag and know what these nitrogen sources do, it does make a difference. And I'm kind of driving that point home in this video of not just grabbing a bag of fertilizer and putting something out. You actually know what you're getting into. So now you're becoming more of a turf manager than just somebody that's grabbed something at Lowe's and thrown it out in your yard. What happens with polymer coated ureas is water works its way into that polymer coat. And depending on the temperature, it actually has pores in that polymer coating that as temperature increases, those pores get bigger and release through osmosis, basically that liquid urea at that time back into the soil, and then it's plant available. But the nice thing about the polymer coating is if you get, particularly you guys in a lower transition zone, I'm talking zone 8, 7, 6, if it warms up during January, where a sulfur coated that you put out, let's say you put that out right now, mid-October, you're going to get basically probably till first week in December, and it's going to kind of work its way out. There's carbohydrates going to be up in the plant, but it's kind of going to be gone. Or a polymer coated, if you put it out in October and it got cold November 1st, it'll sit there. It won't release. And then you get a January thaw, it'll start releasing. As the temperature increases, now that plant can actually absorb it, it will actually increase. And going into the spring, you're not going to have any of that sulfur coated urea left. But the polymer coating, particularly if you had a cold winter, is still going to be there and it's going to be feeding well in the spring. So what are your options? I have this on my Amazon storefront. Particularly if you need potassium, you guys should take a soil test. I have a soil test video. In that video, I go over a website where you can find where to get a soil test in your state for probably free or less than $10, unbiased soil sample from your local land grant university. There again, this is a 25-7-12. If you need potassium, that's a little higher source of potassium than the other fertilizer I want to recommend to you. This is also 2/3 of this is polymer coated urea. So you're going to get, if you go out with this at 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet, you're going to get about half a pound of quick release fertilizer, going to feed that grass, get it going, get those carbohydrates up in it. And then with the 2/3 of it left over, 15% of the 25% is going to feed you well into May. That is the product that has the most polymer coated urea in it. The other one is the Stay Green Max. Talked about this a lot. Like this is at your local Lowe's. Very good product. The thing is with the 3003, it doesn't have the potassium in it. If you don't need it, it may not be a bad move. Secondly, it's on sale at Lowe's, at least mine. So do keep that in mind. Sometimes you can get this pretty doggone cheap at your local Lowe's, particularly this time of year. The thing is, only about a little less than a third of this is polymer coated. You're also going to get about, I think it was 10% sulfur coated product. Not a deal breaker, particularly if you're going out with this earlier in the season, because then let's say you put this out in mid-October, that's going to feed you till late Thanksgiving. For majority of you, that's not a bad thing. So you're going to get that feed on the sulfur coated. In addition, it has a stabilized urea in it. We've talked about that. This is not the ideal time to do that, but there again, that's probably going to last in that October feed. It's going to go ahead and that methylene urea will break down between now and Christmas. In that December timeframe that we're talking about is when we want to do our nitrogen application. So those are the two. One of those two I would go with, whichever works for you. Hopefully that will help. As far as clarification of what you should be using in the fall. Putting nitrogen out this time of year, am I going to get increased snow mold or any type of winter disease pressure? Short answer, no. If you're between that 0.75 and 1.5 pounds per 1,000 square feet, you're going to be in pretty good shape. In fact, you're going to get a more hardy plant going into the winter. Its winter hardiness is going to be better, and its overall color is going to be better, and health is going to be better. So they didn't see an increase, they didn't see a decrease, but they didn't see an increase, which is more important in any type of disease pressure, according to the Ohio State publication. So there's that. Now, for those of you who are concerned about snow mold, I did talk about this in my fall fertilization video. One thing that I would do is you have basically two products. You have anoxystrobin and you have propiconazole. Those are the two active ingredients. I'll leave the propiconazole, and here's the anoxystrobins that I have on my Amazon storefront. You can also maybe grab some of these at your local Lowe's as well. What I would probably try to do is I probably put an anoxystrobin anywhere from about 6 weeks prior to your first cumulative snow or snowpack, if you will. Then about anywhere from 3 to ideally 2 weeks prior to your first snowfall, probably go out with propiconazole. That should pretty much cover you and help a bit. One thing they state below in the Penn State article, particularly you guys lower in the transition zone, sometimes when you get propiconazole in there, there again, these are systemic fungicides. And if you get a warm winter, eventually that will work its way out. However, I have found that when you do a snow mold application in the fall, it will help you with spring green up. And it's kind of like an insurance policy. Can you get by without doing it? Probably so. And as it said in the Penn State article down below, most of the snow mold damage you have, you can simply mow off in the spring and you'll be good to go. I myself usually go out with an anoxystrobin, then I'll put a propiconazole out. My area is zone 6B, usually around Thanksgiving, and it helps a little bit in the spring and helps things at least not be so much effective and lessen my yellow patch, snow mold, and other types of winter diseases that I have. I'll mention weed control, and your perennial broadleaf weeds like clover, for example, right now putting their resources down into the roots. They're getting ready to overwinter. That is why this is the ideal time of year to do broadleaf weed applications. So I'll give you a couple, and a few of you guys both on. By the way, I have and this was the inspiration for this video was I actually had Jason on the Facebook page ask me, hey, Could you do a video on nitrogen applications in the fall? You guys want to go over to the Facebook page. I generally try to answer questions on there each morning, kind of go through and try to catch up. You can take pictures there. If you have any questions, obviously you can leave it down in the comments below. Leave a QR code, take you over to the Facebook page and join that group. A lot of guys over there, very knowledgeable guys, including myself. I can help you out with a number of things involved with your yard. Anyway, we're talking about weed control. Two recommendations that I would give is one is SpeedZone. The reason why I like SpeedZone so much is several fold. One, it works at cold temperatures. We're talking about either in the spring or maybe late in the fall. If you guys have gone out, some of you guys have, and I have too, because it was so doggone dry and so doggone hot this fall, had to go out and seed again. One with SpeedZone could have went out that second. Generally, you got to mow the grass 2 times or 4 weeks, whichever is longer, on any type of herbicide applications on new seedlings. But the nice thing about SpeedZone is you can do it later on in the year to where your grass that you seeded this fall can mature and you can go out with SpeedZone fairly late. I actually put SpeedZone out last year, fiddling around with it in the spring. I actually put it out when the nighttime temperatures got all the way down to 19 degrees, and I actually saw a little bit of control out of SpeedZone on clover and ground ivy at that cold of temperatures. It's extreme. That's not what I recommend, but it does show that this actually works very, very good at cold temperatures. The other one, and many of you guys have commented both on the Facebook page and in comments down below, and I encourage you guys, something working down below, leave it down below. I'd like to know more about what's working for you. Is also T-Zone. Both of these are PBI Gordon products. The nice thing about T-Zone is it really like wild violet, some very difficult broadleaf weeds, and some of you guys have mentioned that one. The reason why I haven't mentioned so much T-Zone is the thing with T-Zone is you have to wait at least 4 weeks to seed behind it. I like the SpeedZone a little bit better because of the colder temperatures, and you can seed 7 days after you've applied it. So that's why I kind of favor the SpeedZone. If you're going to have something that's ready to go in your arsenal, that's not the bad move. I've got both of these on my Amazon storefront. I'll leave a QR code right here. But if you have tough broadleaf weeds, and let's say you've used SpeedZone, couldn't get the broadleaf weeds controlled, the T-Zone is going to knock it out. So the T-Zone is very good. However, it really needs to be, daytime temperatures need to be really above 60 degrees for it to work as well. SpeedZone, you can get down probably 45, 50, and you'll actually see some good, decent control out of SpeedZone. But those are the two I recommend for here in the fall, particularly, and in the spring. You can check out those on my Amazon storefront. Okay, that's fall nitrogen application with a little bit of weed control and disease control thrown in. If you guys are wondering where I'm getting any stripes from, it's actually from an Arthobot robot lawnmower that I did a review on. I have an Ecovacs working on my other yard with the Bermuda grass tall fescue down there. Um, I have a QR code. You guys can check that out on Amazon storefront, see the price of those this time of year. They may be on sale. If it's something you might want to think about, this one's actually worked out very well. It gives me outstanding stripes and makes it a lot easier to maintain grass. There again, the sooner you mow grass, okay, the more often you grow grass actually stimulates. Talk about that in, I think it was my fall video. I talk about that. The more you can grow grass, the more it stimulates growth and horizontal growth, and it gives you more uniform coverage all the time. So there's a lot of advantages to a robot lawnmower, not to mention all the time it's going to save you. And the precise stripes, look how straight that is. Couldn't do that walking, and I've done a lot of greens mowing and fairway mowing over my time. So it's actually pretty cool. You guys want to check that out, check out the Facebook page. If you subscribe and hit the bell, I keep my videos very topical. That's why I'm talking about fall nitrogen application. Be doing that next year. I'm actually coming out with a spring seeding, and I think I may have found a herbicide, pre-emergent herbicide that you can put out that will control weeds during the winter. You can seed right into. I need to do a little more research on that. But subscribe, hit the bell. I keep things very current, and I'm trying to help you reach the goals for your yard. Anyway, I'm agronomist Greg Phillips, and I hope this helps. Good luck fertilizing this fall, and thanks for watching.